So we must do two things, two great things together, to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. All right, we're ready to begin with the Gospel of Matthew. I just want to preface that by giving you the background within the science of being. You know that John Dorley took Matthew on two occasions, once in 1948 and once in 1949. 1949, the Oxford Summer School, where he took Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John together. And in 1948, he presented Matthew through the main tones and subtones of the subject without any accentuation on life, truth, and love. So only in 1949 did he take the same subject again with the law of life, truth, and love, showing that impact and revising his original epitomes to incorporate life, truth, and love. Also pointing out the operative four through the story. His emphasis was on order, the order of the system, the order of the structure. Structure for him was called layout. He would often refer to the layout of the subject, the layout of the text. And later we came to see that this would be termed the structure of the text. And so, as I say, his accentuation was always on order, structure and system as order. Then Max Kepler came, and in 1973 he took John Dorley's presentation and showed again the seven under the impulsion of life, truth, and love, with the main accentuation on life, truth, and love. That was 25 years later. And the emphasis that Max Kepler always had was to show what a law was, to show everything in terms of law. And so he took that subject of Matthew with its two great aspects of absolute Christian Science and Christian Science and showed them to be laws, the law of absolute Christian Science and Christian Science, working interdependently as law. So structure and system as law. You see the difference there. I believe that Max actually gave two or perhaps three presentations of that law of interdependence with Matthew. He gave it in the 73 Laws class and also in D4, which I believe was, somebody can correct me, was that New York D4? Meredith, would you know? D4 being the tape code. And I think he gave another presentation in England, short presentation, in which he again presented Matthew. The only other time that Matthew has been presented, as far as I know, was by myself in, not that I was by myself, I did have a class, but I presented it in 1989 at Pomona, I believe it was Pomona College at that time, and was showing the three synoptic gospels, that would be Matthew, Mark, and Luke, in their structure as had been presented fundamentally by John Dorley, and I gave to them the accentuation of divine cybernetics. And then later I gave the Gospel of John with the same accentuation of divine cybernetics, but only in a very shortened version and as a preparation for Max Kapler's class, which was to follow in that year as a major presentation of the Gospel of John. So that's the story of Matthew insofar as we are concerned here. It may be that you would, perhaps Uta, you could help me. John Morgan, did he present to Matthew? Yeah, in England. Is that right? In the 60s. All right. So here we are today. It is 58 years after Mr. Dorley's presentations and 33 years after Max Kapler's presentations. And the emphasis today is quite different, as we have been feeling. We are taking John Dorley's presentation, we're taking the sevenfold order of the Word under the law of life, truth, and love, but as held really within the dynamic constraints of the fourfold calculus, as in the service of the plan of love. So the emphasis really is on those attractors of science and love. So the emphasis is today more on plan. It is on design, structure and system as design, as plan, as pattern, as blueprint, and this is something that we haven't done before. So it's an adventure, and I thank you for joining me in that adventure. And we know that love is all to do with attraction, with the attractor, the attractive quality of love. And so we're going to see that this story really presents us with a whole course of attractors, a way of life, a way really that Jesus represented as he was illustrating the Christ man as it is fulfilled at the point of love. So this is really now a pattern that we are given, the pattern of how the Christ man is fulfilled in us. And all along that way, all through that pattern, are sprinkled the attractors of love and science. And in each instance, I hope that we will see that life, which is the impulsion, as we've always known it to be, the drive, the acceleration of life, that behind every impulsion in this story is really the attraction of love, that there's no impulsion except there be first an attraction. There is the retrocausality of love, and that there is no logic of truth, no form of truth coming out, no confirmation, no affirmation of truth as the result or the effect of life, but that there be, first of all, the attraction of love. So in going through the story myself, I felt it was that love set the purpose, love set the goal for each tone, each great tone of that story, those 7 tones. Love sets the purpose, and then it causes love to impel all the circumstances that will bring about the fulfilled goal. Isn't that beautiful? So the goal is there first, and so it is the goal that impels life to impel everything toward the fulfillment of that goal. And naturally, life can only do that with truth, as it works with truth, and as truth confirms that which life is impelling. So it's always the the let there be, and there was, and it was good, but we really start with the it was good, it's good, it's done, it's established, it's fulfilled. And out of that comes out of that fulfillment, let there be. Let there be everything that there seems to be a need to have to make that happen, to bring that about, to bring forth the concrete confirmation of it in truth, the logicity, the logic, the meaning of it in truth, until we see that life and truth are nothing but love. They are bringing about the fulfillment that is already in place, in being. Does that make sense? It's a different feeling for the law. So behind every impulsion in this story then is the attraction of love, so that we see in life the end from the beginning. The end is already there. The fulfillment is already there. So let us take Matthew now at the point of mind. So what we are going to see really is that mind is all to do now with the manifestation, with life, truth, and love manifesting as mind, the parent mind. It's all about the sense of origin. It's all about that question, what is my origin? Where did I come from? What is my background? As soon as we can see that it is the parent mind that brought us forth, we begin to bring to light the true idea of man. Looking at the subtone of mind is mind. It's a beautiful thing. It's the creative sense, life providing everything, providing the ideal setting. It's the provision of life. It's like life will always set forth and provide everything that's needed to bring that idea to fulfillment. Isn't that terrific? So the point of life, that which is being impelled in, is that which is exactly needed for the situation, exactly right to bring about love's fulfillment. And so life is providing there the ideal background, the ideal parentage. It is impelling the breaking in of the light of mind, and is constantly doing that, is ever doing that. The impulsion of life is the creative force, the creative impulsion, impelling mind to manifest itself as that infinite light. And what is the story there? It's really all to do with the genealogy of Jesus. Perhaps you are familiar with that, or you remember that from reading the text. It's the part that we skip. Right? You open the Bible to read Matthew and you say, oh no, I don't have to read this. Let's see. And so-and-so begat so-and-so, and so-and-so begat so-and, begat, and there's, I don't know, I don't recall how many? 42. It's three sets of 14 generations. And so we have to see, what does that represent? What lies behind that phenomenon, that thing that we're not interested in, that we don't want to read about? Is something quite marvelous, just quite marvelous. It's all pointing to the divine origin, not to the human origin. So why in the world does Matthew take up this genealogy if the whole issue is divine in nature? You know that Matthew wrote really for the nation of Israel. He wrote for the Jews. He felt that was his purpose, to write for the Jews, not to write for the Romans, as Mark did, not to write for the Gentiles as Luke did, but to write for the Jews. And so he was very much concerned with answering every question that could be raised against the legitimacy of Jesus as the Messiah. When we talk about legitimacy, we talk about law, don't we? So that whole question of law comes up here, right in the first subtone of mind as mind, a question about his legal authority, about the line that he came from, because this was very much a strong part in the Jewish mind, as it's also in the human mind, the question of where we came from and who our ancestors were, and if we have the right ancestors, and what our background really is. That the human mind tends to evaluate each one on just such a basis. That's one basis. And so he saw that the origin had to be legal. It had to be lawful. It had to be according to the law. In other words, in accord with the Old Testament, everything in the Old Testament, in accord with the Torah, what was called the Torah or the Old Testament. And so he wanted to answer that question, does this phenomenon fulfill the messianic credentials that were pre-established in the Old Testament? All the requirements. And does he fill in the prophecies, the prophecies that were set forth in utter detail throughout the Old Testament as to who the Messiah would be, what would this character have to be in order to be the Messiah? You know that, for instance, there were the certain healings that the Messiah had to perform. There were 3 major healings that he had to be able to perform that had never been performed before. That's what makes the 5th tone so interesting as we come to it and begin to look at the healing mission of Jesus. We see that he starts out with one of those healings. I think most Christians don't realize that when they are taking Matthew. I think we miss a lot when we don't know the Jewish background, when we don't know anything about the Old Testament or just the whole Jewish side of that line. We gloss over much that's in the text and not realizing the depth of it, the incredible depth of it.